At 33, I decided to get married. As I said those words, I submitted my resignation letter. Ethan was holding his white moonlight, Grace, in his arms. He did not even bother to look up, his tone full of ridicule. "You're already 33, he said. "If you wait another 2 years to have a child, you'll be considered an elderly pregnant woman. No one would want you anyway." After that, I sent him a wedding invitation, on the 8th of next month, at the Kim Vien Hotel. We sincerely hope that President Ethan will attend. Ethan's white moonlight, Grace, had returned to the country. I had heard about it before, but I never expected her to appear in Ethan's office as a company representative. What surprised me even more was that Ethan called me in and told me, as the CEO's assistant, to take direct responsibility for both her work and her personal life. "Grace has just returned," he said, "and there's no one reliable by her side. You'll take care of her for a while. Once I find a suitable assistant, you'll be replaced." Ethan spoke in a calm, indifferent tone, his face completely expressionless, as if this were merely a work matter. I took a deep breath. The professionalism I had cultivated over so many years would not allow my personal emotions to interfere with my work. "I'm sorry," I said. "I currently have many projects on hand, and don't have time to manage Miss Grace's schedule. You can find someone more suitable." Ethan frowned. "Everyone in the company knows your capabilities, Assistant Jane. It's just a small task you can handle easily. Why are you reacting like this?" Grace put on a fragile, pitiful expression. "If Assistant Jane is busy, then forget it. I'm not in a hurry anyway. Ethan, please don't be angry." Ethan's expression softened. He said gently, "That won't do. Grace, you're too naive. This world is complicated and full of bad people. One small mistake, and you'll suffer. You need someone experienced by your side. Otherwise, I won't feel at ease. Assistant Jane has been through countless ups and downs in this company. No one is better at handling situations than she is. With her clearing the way for you, things will go much more smoothly." Grace said nothing. She continued to clutch Ethan's sleeve, while her eyes secretly glanced toward me. I stood there looking straight at Ethan, the CEO. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I can't accept this assignment." Ethan flew into a rage. "Jane, know your place. I'm your boss. If I tell you to do it, you do it." My gaze swept past Grace. A trace of smug satisfaction appeared in her eyes, just like 20 years ago when she wore a pink princess dress and stood opposite me, with a pool of dark red blood between us. I calmly removed my employee badge. "I resign." When I pushed the door open and walked out, the sound of a glass cup shattering rang out behind me, followed by Ethan's furious shout. "Jane, if you walk out that door today, don't ever come back." Outside, the employees looked at one another in shock and fell into silence. No one dared to speak. They communicated only through exchanged glances. Mike, one of my subordinates, poked his head out and asked in a low voice, "Assistant Jane, what happened? Are you really leaving? I've never seen President Ethan this angry before. Is the company running into some kind of trouble?" The others said nothing, but all of them were secretly listening. For a company to maintain long-term stability, the greatest taboo is turmoil within senior management, which leaves employees anxious and unsettled. This company was founded by Ethan and me together. From the very beginning, I devoted 10 years of my heart and soul to building it into what it is today. It could not be led down the wrong path because of such a trivial matter. I reassured my worried colleagues with my eyes. "This has nothing to do with the company. It's just a personal disagreement between President Ethan and me." On the way, Ethan called me countless times, but I rejected every call. I imagined him angrily smashing things, and for some reason, I felt an unusual sense of relief. It turned out that the feeling of not answering someone else's calls was unexpectedly exhilarating. No wonder Ethan used to ignore my calls so often in the past. I savored this brief moment of leisure. For the first time since starting the business 10 years ago, my life had not revolved entirely around Ethan and the company. This afternoon was almost the first time I truly had time that belonged solely to me. There were no non-stop phone calls, no urgent trips, no need to humble myself and beg anyone, no forced composure while exchanging pleasantries at banquets, and no need to drink glass after glass of alcohol. For the first time, I felt this free and at ease. I leisurely ate a bowl of hot noodle soup on the street, then wandered through the night market. By the time I got home, it was already past 10 o'clock. Ethan was sitting on the sofa facing the front door, his expression far from pleasant. "Where did you go, coming back this late?" I said nothing, and walked straight into the bedroom. Ethan grew angry, strode over, grabbed my wrist tightly, and pressed me against the wall. "Are you mute now? I only said a few words and you got upset, and you even dared to walk away in front of so many employees. What kind of assistant dares to be this arrogant?" I did not step back at all. "Ethan, besides being your assistant, I am also your fiancée." Ethan's expression shifted slightly, as if someone had caught him off guard, and his tone carried a trace of unease. "I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted you to arrange Grace's work. She's too naive. Without someone guiding her, she won't be able to handle things." I truly wanted to laugh. 10 years ago, after Ethan's mother passed away, all the family assets were seized by his half-brother from his father's side. I stayed by his side. With nothing to our names, we started from scratch in the scorching summer heat, riding rented bicycles to promote ourselves and attract clients. Back then, we had just graduated from college and had no social experience at all. We relied only on sincerity and perseverance to move others. Being ignored by clients, stood up, deliberately embarrassed, or forced to drink was commonplace. Sometimes right at the drinking table, I even had to face wandering, inappropriate hands. But the humiliation and tears, I could only swallow them myself. The tact and social skills I possess now were honed bit by bit at banquets full of men. Back then, no one paved the road for me. I, Jane, at 23, could walk on my own. So why couldn't Grace at 33? Ethan did not think and replied immediately. "How can the two of you be the same? You've been used to hardship since you were young, but Grace grew up spoiled and protected. She's never experienced those things. If you have the ability to help her, what's wrong with that?" My heart suddenly turned cold. After a brief pause, I asked, "Then why did you choose her as the company's representative when you clearly know about the conflicts between her and me?" Ethan looked at me the way one looks at a child throwing a tantrum. "You're being unreasonable," he said, rubbing his temples lightly. "Jane, what happened to your father was just an accident. I regret it too. But at that time, Grace was only 13 years old. She was still just a child." I said decisively, "You can choose anyone as the company's representative, but it absolutely cannot be her." Ethan clenched his teeth. "Jane, don't push your luck. Even without you, the company will continue to operate as usual." The company had just finalized a cooperation agreement with Kian Group after months of negotiation. The next day, a press conference would be held to announce the partnership. Even though I was angry with Ethan for the sake of the company, I could not be absent from such an important event. I moved effortlessly among the reporters, greeting each of them with a smile. The names and information of every reporter had been organized and sent to me in advance by Mike, and I had memorized everything quickly the moment I received the list before the press conference began. I had people bring water and light snacks to the reporters and cameramen to keep them from getting bored, and at the same time, I gave them small commemorative gifts printed with the company logo. This was a way to show consideration for the media while subtly promoting the company. In the era of mass media, the group a company should least afford to offend is reporters, who hold the power of public opinion. Ethan had always shown disdain for the things I arranged. He said my way of working was misguided and nothing but wasted effort. He would go on, insisting that the best way to strengthen a company was to improve its core capabilities, that a good fragrance does not fear a deep alley. Every time this happened, I would simply lower my head and listen without arguing. Ethan was never someone who listened to advice, but that was fine. The things he did not see, I would take care of myself. The press conference proceeded very smoothly. As it was nearing the end, Ethan suddenly stopped the reporters who were preparing to leave the room. "Taking advantage of today's occasion, I'd also like to announce some good news to everyone," he said. "The representative of Prosperity Group for the next 3 years will be the young female dancer, Grace." I had been turning my head to greet others and exchange business cards. When I heard this, I froze in shock and looked up at the stage. I did not know when Grace had gone up there. Their eyes met, brimming with affection. Below the stage, camera flashes went off continuously, and the sound of shutters filled the air. Grace was wearing a finely tailored black formal dress, her soft figure standing close beside Ethan. Around her neck was a pigeon blood ruby necklace, its deep red color making her porcelain white skin stand out even more. My gaze stiffened. That necklace was the engagement token Ethan's mother had given me years ago. That night, Ethan did not come home. The next morning, photos of Grace linking arms with Ethan, smiling sweetly on stage, spread across social media. I did not know where it started, but the news became so popular that it shot to the top of Weibo's trending searches. I opened the related keywords, and they were filled with praise for the talented man and beautiful woman. The CEO of Prosperity Group is really like a domineering CEO straight out of fiction. Young, handsome, and elegant in real life. Every feature is so perfect, it's unbelievable. Isn't Grace the dancer who won an international award last year? She's so beautiful, with incredible poise. She really looks like a perfect match standing next to President Ethan. Did anyone notice the necklace Grace is wearing? It looks familiar. I feel like I've seen it somewhere before. Someone posted an internal photo from a charity gala. In the picture, Ethan's mother was wearing that very pigeon blood ruby necklace, smiling brightly at the camera. It was taken a year before her accident. The case has already been cleared up. Just saw it on another forum. Grace and President Ethan of Prosperity Group have been a couple since college. Later, Grace pursued her dance dreams and went abroad, while President Ethan quietly started his business back in their hometown, waiting for her to return. 10 years have passed, and now the two have reunited and rekindled their old romance. My God, this is truly a fairy tale love story. There's no smoke without fire. Ethan had always appeared only on business news pages, yet now rumors about him were suddenly everywhere. It was obvious who was behind these rumors. There was no need to guess. But rumors like these brought no benefit to the company at all. I tried calling Ethan once again, but still, no one answered. Just as I was about to hang up, the call suddenly connected. From the other end came Grace's sweet voice. "Assistant Jane, I'm really sorry. Ethan just went to take a shower. Is something the matter? I'll tell him to call you back later." I was silent for a moment before saying, "Tell him to take down the rumors online. They're having a negative impact on the company." Grace laughed lightly, her voice clear and bright. "Jane, don't use the company as an excuse. Aren't you just afraid that Ethan and I getting back together will push you out of your current position? Let me tell you, don't indulge in wishful thinking. The person standing beside Ethan can only be me. You're nothing more than someone living off scraps. If it weren't for your luck in being taken in by the Ethan family, in this lifetime you wouldn't even have had the chance to polish his shoes. Frankly speaking, you should be thanking me. If it weren't for me, how would you have ever been taken in by the Ethan family?" I tightened my grip on the phone. "Thank you? Thank you for what? For being ungrateful and causing my father's death?" A soft click sounded, and Ethan's slightly hazy voice came from the other end of the line. "Grace, I'm done showering. You go take a bath now." "Who was calling?" Grace replied gently, "No one important, just a spam call." "Come here," Ethan said. "I'll dry your hair for you. If you leave it wet like this, you'll get headaches when you're older." His voice was intimate, tinged with ambiguity. "When that time comes, won't you still have me by your side?" I hung up immediately. Just then, Mike called. "Assistant Jane, the media department is asking if we need to intervene to cool things down online." I looked down at the empty jewelry box on the table, the place where the pigeon blood ruby necklace had once been kept. No need. When Ethan returned home, I had just finished packing my luggage. One person walked in, one person walked out. We ran into each other in the narrow entryway. Ethan looked slightly surprised. "Where are you going?" I replied calmly. "Please move aside. The landlord is waiting for me to sign the contract." He frowned, his expression displeased. "What are you trying to pull this time? Do you think doing this will make me give in?" "No matter what trouble you stir up, Grace has already been officially introduced to the media as the company's representative. You can't change that." I shook my head. "It doesn't matter anymore. Whoever you choose in the future is your business. I won't interfere." Ethan's face changed abruptly. "What do you mean by that?" I answered seriously. "President Ethan, I will formally submit my resignation letter in a few days. I've already packed my things. Everything I shouldn't take, I've left behind. You can go into the room and check. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other." His face darkened. "You're using your resignation to threaten me?" "Jane, you've always been the reasonable one. I really don't understand why you're so hostile toward Grace. It's just a representative position. Why can't you accept it?" I corrected him. "This isn't a threat, it's a notice. I can't be the saint you expect me to be. Between Grace and me stands my father's death. I can't coexist with her. Your choice is not something I have the right to interfere with. Fortunately, I can choose to leave on my own, so I don't have to see her again." I pulled my suitcase forward, but Ethan grabbed me, grinding his teeth. "Even if you resign, you still have to stay here. Have you forgotten? You promised my mother you would take care of me." I laughed bitterly. "Ethan, even Joe Batong wouldn't squeeze someone dry like this, let alone someone as capable as you. Yes, your mother raised me for 10 years, but I also gave you 10 years in return. Sprat, I'm 33 this year. The most beautiful years of a woman's life have been consumed by endless races forward. If you have even a shred of conscience left, don't use kindness and obligation to bind me anymore. Let me go." I pushed him away and walked toward the door, but Ethan exploded in anger and shouted, "Then what about the engagement? Don't forget, we still have an engagement." The engagement between Ethan and me had been made right beside his mother's hospital bed. In the presence of my maternal relatives, his mother personally placed the pigeon blood ruby necklace, passed down through generations of the Ethan family, into my hands. From that day on, I became Ethan's secret fiancée. Yet for the past 10 years, Ethan had never once mentioned fulfilling the engagement. Whenever his uncle brought it up, he would always deftly evade the topic. Now that Grace had just returned, he could no longer restrain himself and wanted to openly declare his passionate love before the entire world. There was a time when I was willing to gamble my love and my entire life on gratitude and obligation. But now that the dealer had broken the rules, there was no longer any reason for me to continue wasting my youth on a hand I was certain to lose. I stopped walking. Ethan, the one who forgot about the engagement, was never me. Ethan's face turned pale with anger. "Jane, do you really want to leave? Let me tell you, you will regret this. You're not young anymore. Other than me, no one will want a 33-year-old woman." The person I was most familiar with always knew exactly where to strike to hurt the most. I stayed silent for a moment. Ethan's tone suddenly softened. "Jane, don't be angry anymore. I'll marry you. As for Grace, once her contract expires, I'll transfer her elsewhere. I won't let her appear in front of you again, okay?" He stepped forward and pulled me into his arms. The faint scent of body wash rushed into my nose, making me feel nauseous. I leaned against his chest and let out a soft laugh. "A virtuous wife and a beautiful lover, President Ethan. Are you trying to enjoy the best of both worlds? I'm sorry, but I refuse." Ethan's body stiffened. I pushed him away and opened the door. Standing behind me, he said coldly, "Jane, do you really think you're that capable? Do you think I can't live without you? Don't be so full of yourself. The market value of men and women is not the same. All I have to do is step outside, and countless young, beautiful women will surround me. And you're already 33. You're not alluring, not gentle. In 2 more years, even giving birth would put you in the category of an elderly mother. No one will like you. You've always been smart. I advise you to see reality clearly. Whether you believe it or not, I am the best option you'll ever find. Jane, I've already lowered my pride for this relationship. Don't be ungrateful. If you walk out that door today, I will no longer acknowledge this engagement." I pulled my suitcase and walked out without looking back. Ethan shouted angrily, "If you leave, don't ever come back. I'll wait for the day you regret this." I submitted my resignation to the company and began setting up my own business. Men may betray you, but the sweat and effort you have poured in never will. 10 years of struggle and countless wounds had all turned into precious experience. I used all my savings to recruit talent and quickly built a studio. However, to expand at scale, I needed a large amount of capital. Mr. Lewis, the CEO of Seastone Group, who had tried many times to lure me away from Prosperity Group, but had always been politely turned down, learned that I was starting my own business, and personally invited me to attend a banquet filled with investors. He patted his protruding belly and laughed like a jolly Buddha. Prosperity Group failing to keep you, Miss Jane, is their loss. Someone as talented as you is bound to rise rapidly sooner or later. I'm just offering a little help along the way. When I entered the banquet hall, I realized that Sean Stone was also there, which surprised me slightly. Sean Stone was a 3-time Best Actor winner in the entertainment industry and had once served as a spokesperson for our company. His acting skills were outstanding, and he was deeply loved by audiences, yet he lived a very low-key life and rarely involved himself in matters outside of acting. Back then, his endorsement contract with the company had only been secured after I spent a long time negotiating persistently. His cooperation greatly boosted Prosperity Group's reputation. Yet now Ethan had let go of it so easily. I could not help but sigh. I did not understand what the organizer had been thinking by seating me right next to Sean Stone. Even though he held a very high status in the entertainment industry, when our eyes met, he smiled lightly. His eyes were bright. Miss Jane, it's been a long time. In Chinese business culture, most deals are discussed at the banquet table. Because I had something to ask for, I kept raising my glass to toast others. Alcohol tolerance is something that is honed little by little. When Ethan's mother was still alive, he and I were like people sheltered under the shade of an old tree. Following behind her, everyone we met was understanding and accommodating. After she passed away unexpectedly and the family assets were seized, the people around us immediately changed their faces. They placed 10 glasses of liquor in front of Ethan, their attitudes arrogant. Isn't Ethan always so conceited, looking down on the rest of us? Today, drink all these glasses to apologize, and all past grudges will be wiped clean. Ethan's face turned pale, yet he still kept his back straight, like a slender bamboo stalk standing too rigidly upright, as if it could be snapped by a gust of wind at any moment. I stepped forward in front of him, took the glasses and drank them one by one. The strong liquor flowed down my throat, burning my stomach with searing pain. I swallowed my tears and forced a smile. Mr. Chu, we were young and ignorant back then and didn't understand how things worked. I hope you'll be magnanimous and not hold it against us. I'm no longer a little girl who cries because of strong liquor. 10 glasses were still not enough to get through the first round of greetings. When I returned to my seat and barely managed to take a few bites, someone else came over to propose another toast. Among them, one man took advantage of the moment to lean in closer. His hand brushed against my waist, deliberately or otherwise. I clenched my teeth silently and endured it. Some things, no matter how many times you experience them, you never truly get used to. But this was not the right moment to react. I memorized his face quietly, while maintaining a calm exterior and revealing no emotion. Just as I was about to take the glass he handed me, I suddenly heard him cry out. Red wine splashed all over his white shirt. Sean Stone said calmly, "Mr. Tai, sorry about that." My hand slipped. Mr. Tai suppressed his anger and retreated into the restroom. I could not help but curl my lips into a faint smile. A bowl of mountain yam porridge was suddenly pushed in front of me. I looked up in surprise, following the hand that placed it there. Sean Stone's eyes held a trace of amusement. "Have some porridge to line your stomach. I don't want to have to send Miss Jane to the hospital again in the middle of the night." When he mentioned the past, I felt a little embarrassed. Back then, in order to secure his endorsement contract, I had followed the film crew for an entire month, waiting every day outside the hotel or at the set. I ate poorly, slept badly, and on top of that, Ethan kept pressuring me. In the end, I developed acute gastritis. When I finally approached Sean Stone to speak with him, I collapsed on the spot. My forehead slammed hard against the ground, scraping a large patch of skin. I must have looked utterly miserable. Perhaps it was my persistence that moved him. The next day, his manager sent me the signed contract. The porridge was still hot. I stirred it gently and took small sips. During that time, people came over to offer drinks, but Sean Stone politely declined on my behalf every time. For the first time, I was able to sit calmly at a banquet table and eat my fill. When the banquet ended, the group of men invited one another to continue on to another round of entertainment. I knew my place and left first. Sean Stone also left the banquet hall shortly after me. He was famous in the entertainment industry, someone who cherished his reputation and always kept himself clean, never participating in any activities after banquets. Afterward, I thanked him for what he had done during the dinner. He casually draped his jacket over my arm. "No need to be so polite. It was just a small matter. I heard you're preparing to start your own company. Do you already have someone for the spokesperson position?" I looked at him in surprise. A so-called spokesperson role was, in essence, an exchange of fame for money. Both sides had to be on equal footing for it to be mutually beneficial. With his status, if he truly wanted to be a spokesperson, countless major companies would be lining up with money in hand. How could it possibly be my turn? There was never such a thing in this world as a pie falling from the sky. I could not help but grow suspicious. Sean Stone remained calm, allowing me to evaluate him in silence. "Working with your company before was very pleasant. My mother is a Buddhist. When I choose partners, I mostly rely on instinct." If it were not for the seriousness on his face, I would have thought he was mocking me. For some reason, Ethan had always disliked Sean Stone. Before Grace returned, Ethan had repeatedly made a fuss about replacing him, and whenever they happened to meet at events, Ethan showed little goodwill. As for Sean Stone, although he maintained a polite exterior, his attitude toward Ethan was even colder than toward a stranger. To be fair, Sean Stone was an excellent partner, professional, highly reputable, and trustworthy, not someone easily entangled in scandals. After careful consideration, I felt this would bring me nothing but benefits. "Are you serious?" I asked. He nodded. "Of course." "Then it's settled," I said. Since a best actor of his stature was willing to lower himself to collaborate with a small, little-known company like mine, I would not hesitate to seize such a rare opportunity. Working with Sean Stone brought immediate and tangible benefits. First of all, I no longer had to worry about investment issues. Mr. Lewis, the CEO of Seastone Group, smiled meaningfully. "Miss Jane may be young, but she already has a solid backing. Truly, the younger generation surpasses the older." Veteran businessmen always liked to speak in vague, guarded ways. I did not fully understand what he meant, and could only smile it off. The second benefit was that the studio's reputation continued to rise, and its scale began to expand. Just as I was urgently looking for more people, Mike suddenly appeared. After I left, the position of executive assistant had been left vacant, and Ethan promoted Mike to replace me. Though he carried the title of executive assistant, his daily work mostly revolved around Grace. He had to introduce connections for her, block drinks for her at banquets, deal with her troubles, and endure her constant complaints and deliberate difficulties. Whenever Grace was mentioned, Mike looked visibly annoyed. Miss Grace is a completely different person in front of people and behind their backs. I'm no different from a personal errand boy. What kind of assistant is this? I'm basically a glorified handyman. I don't know what kind of spell she cast on President Ethan, but he doesn't even care about the company's development plans anymore. Grace was arrogant and disliked hearing colleagues praise me. She openly claimed that she had studied for an MBA overseas and said that even without me, she could still help Ethan manage the company well. Ethan indulged her, and even gave her an official title within the company. The result was that she was ignorant and did not know how to conduct herself, offending quite a few people at banquets. As the company began to encounter difficulties, Ethan grew angry, but he did not dare vent his frustration on Grace. Instead, Mike became the first to bear the consequences, turning into an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire. While he was feeling aggrieved, Mike heard the news that I had started my own company and immediately decided to resign. If President Ethan keeps going like this, the company will collapse sooner or later. I remained silent. Ethan would never give up Grace. That year, he had a major argument with his mother because of Grace and decided to move out. In the sweltering heat of summer, he worked as a laborer at construction sites, eating instant noodles every day in the cheapest rented room, yet he stubbornly refused to break up with her. I advised him to go back home, but he only looked at me with disdain. "Jane, do you even understand what love is?" How ironic it was that less than a month later, the person he called his true love could no longer endure it. Behind his back, she came to me and asked me to pass a message to his mother. As long as Mrs. Ethan agreed to sponsor her studies abroad, she would voluntarily leave. I do not know what Grace ultimately said to Ethan, but he sent her off with great reluctance and then returned home. From that moment on, however, the way he looked at me always carried a trace of resentment and hostility. In Ethan's world, perhaps nothing mattered more than Grace, neither family nor company. The next time I saw Ethan was at a banquet for young entrepreneurs. Grace stood beside him, wearing a perfectly fitted evening gown, her hair elegantly swept up. She looked no different from the wife of a true CEO. The only thing missing was the red jade necklace. Ethan looked at me, his gaze deep and silent, without saying a word. A flicker of wariness crossed Grace's face as she suddenly linked her arm through his. "Miss Jane." "No, Jane," she said. "What are you doing here? Haven't you already submitted your resignation? What does this have to do with Prosperity Group anymore? Why are you here? I heard you opened a small company. Did business not go well, so you want to come back to Prosperity Group? Let me tell you, there's no chance of that. I'm the executive assistant now." Ethan's expression shifted slightly. "Jane, I haven't approved your resignation yet. If you come back, I'll let everything go." Grace stared at him in disbelief. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" Ethan did not look at her, his eyes fixed only on me. "Come back. Everything we agreed on still stands." Grace looked back and forth between Ethan and me, not understanding what we were talking about, but her instincts told her something was wrong. She narrowed her eyes, then reached for a small dessert spoon and tapped it against her champagne glass. The clear sound instantly drew everyone's attention. Grace took out a diamond ring from her bag and smiled sweetly. "I'd like to ask everyone here to bear witness. I want to propose to President Ethan of Prosperity Group." As soon as the words left her mouth, Ethan looked utterly stunned. Before he could say anything, Grace had already knelt down on one knee. Laughter and teasing immediately erupted around us. Grace looked up, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Ethan, we've known each other since our freshman year of college. We've gone through so many hardships together over the past 14 years. 10 years ago you proposed to me, but I told you to let me pursue my dreams, and that when I was worthy of you, I would come back. Now I've returned, just as I promised. This time, I'll be the one supporting your dreams." Ethan seemed frozen. He did not look at Grace at all, but turned his vacant gaze toward me. Before I could react, sudden applause rang out from behind me. Sean Stone, who I did not know had appeared beside me, raised the slender champagne flute in his hand, his voice unhurried as he spoke. "The love between President Ethan and Miss Grace is truly admirable. I wish the two of you a lifetime of happiness." As soon as Sean finished speaking, applause erupted around us. Quite a few people stepped forward to offer their congratulations and praise. Before long, I was pushed to the edge of the crowd. Under the cheers, Ethan's face turned pale. He allowed Grace to slip the ring onto his finger, yet his gaze pierced through the crowd and locked onto me, his eyes heavy, as if carrying countless emotions. I accepted a glass of wine from Sean. Through the dim lighting, the deep red liquid made Grace look as though she were draped in a cloak of blood-red light. In my mind, another image surfaced, Grace at 13 years old, her hair in disarray, her face full of panic, pointing at my father as her voice nearly broke. "It was him. That stupid trash collector killed someone. It has nothing to do with me." I calmly raised my glass from afar and made a gesture of congratulations. Ethan's face instantly drained of all color. That night, I was awakened by a phone call. "Jane, come to the Blue Obsidian bar quickly. My brother Ethan is completely wasted." It was fiancée, one of Ethan's closest friends. I became fully alert. Whenever Ethan was in a bad mood, he would go out drinking. He could not handle alcohol well and always drank himself unconscious, then needed me to pick him up. My number was saved in the contacts of all his close friends. No matter the weather or how late it was, as long as I received a call, I would throw on a coat and drive out to bring him home. I sent Grace's phone number to Fan Shu. "I've already resigned from Prosperity Group. I have nothing to do with Ethan anymore. If something happens next time, call his fiancée." I hung up and crawled back under the covers. I did not know how much time passed before loud knocking suddenly sounded at the door. I checked my phone. It was already 3:30 in the morning. I hurriedly put on a coat and looked through the peephole. Fiancée was standing outside, supporting Ethan. Frowning, I opened the door. Fiancée laughed awkwardly and explained, "Jane, Ethan absolutely refused to go home. He kept insisting on finding you. No matter how much I tried to persuade him, it didn't work, so I had no choice but to bring him here. You two talk it out slowly. I'll take my leave now." After saying that, he let go of Ethan and disappeared quickly. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, his face flushed, his eyes unfocused. I took out my phone, intending to call Grace, but Ethan slammed his hand down, knocking the phone to the ground. He grabbed my wrist, pulled me closer, and bent down toward me, his gaze fierce. "What exactly is going on between you and that guy with the last name Stone? Do you remember that you're my fiancée, Jane?" His breath reeked of alcohol, making me uncomfortable. I placed my hand on his chest and pushed him away, saying calmly, "Ethan, stop making trouble. Have you forgotten? Your fiancée now is Grace." As soon as I finished speaking, he suddenly spread his fingers in front of me, his voice hoarse. I never agreed to her. His long, slender fingers were bare. The diamond ring from earlier was nowhere to be seen on his ring finger. I frowned slightly. He rummaged in his pocket, pulled out the blazing red ruby necklace, and thrust it toward me, his voice urgent. "I never gave this necklace to Grace. She took it herself when I wasn't paying attention. Jane, we got engaged beside my mother's hospital bed. I never thought of marrying anyone else. I was just—" His eyes reddened slightly. Yet his hand stubbornly continued to hold the necklace out to me. The night wind carried a chill. I tightened my coat and finished his sentence for him. "You just wanted to play a little longer, didn't you? Just like you said, there are countless young, beautiful women surrounding you. Whether I get married or not, what difference does it make? Because I'll always be here waiting for you. The longer you drag it out, the harder it is for me to leave you." Ethan looked as if he had been struck straight in the heart. He avoided my gaze in embarrassment. I looked up at the pitch-black sky behind him and sighed. "Ethan, you know, your calculations aren't wrong. A woman's youth is truly precious. I'm 33 this year, and in the dating market, people would already label me an undesirable old maid. Leaving you, I might truly never find someone with better conditions. But I don't want to wait anymore. Following someone who refuses to turn back is exhausting. Disappointment keeps piling up, and my heart is always anxious and uneasy. Standing in front of you, I'm like a commodity, waiting for the day you might take pity on me and, out of charity, deign to look my way. But Ethan, marriage is not a relationship of giving alms and begging. I owe your mother a debt of gratitude, but over all these years I've given everything I had for you. Even if your mother were standing in front of me today, I could still say with a clear conscience that I have nothing to be ashamed of. Ethan, truly, I am not the only one in your heart." Ethan's eyes reddened even more. Without thinking, he grabbed my wrist. "Jane, I was wrong. You want to get married, right? We'll do it as soon as it's daylight." I gently pulled my hand free and smiled helplessly. "Ethan, things don't always go the way you want. It's not that you get to marry when you want and not when you don't. I've changed my mind now. I don't want to marry you anymore. My life right now is busy, but it's fulfilling. Everything I contribute is seen, acknowledged, and respected. I think it's fine even if I never get married." He stared at the hand I had just pulled away, his eyes filled with anger. "Seen, acknowledged, respected? Jane, the person you're talking about, is it Sean Stone? I noticed it a long time ago. There's something unclear between you and him. I was wrong, but you're not innocent either. That endorsement contract, did it have to be him? Was it worth quitting your job and following him with the film crew for an entire month? Do you think I'm an idiot? So many major companies wanted him. Why would he show you special favor?" Rage surged through me before I could stop myself, and I raised my hand and slapped Ethan across the face. "Ethan, have you never learned how to respect other people? Don't assume everyone is as filthy as you are." The moment the words left my mouth, both of us froze. I paused for a moment, then pointed calmly toward the door that stood wide open. "I'm tired and sleepy. I have a meeting with investors tomorrow. You should go and don't see me again in the future." I did not expect to run into Grace beside Mr. Tai, the CEO of Guangmao Group. She was wearing a fishtail gown, her figure alluring as she clung tightly to the middle-aged man with a beer belly. When our eyes met, she faltered for a split second, her expression briefly unnatural. Just then, Mr. Tai raised his glass and walked over to me. Grace had no choice but to follow. Mr. Tai smiled broadly, full of ingratiation. "Miss Jane, it's been a long time. You're as impressive as ever. I wonder when you might have some time to do me the honor of sharing a meal. We can talk about cooperation and making money together." I smiled faintly. "Mr. Tai already has a beauty by his side, yet you still want to talk business with me. Aren't you afraid she'll be unhappy?" Mr. Tai slapped Grace's backside hard and grinned lewdly. "Women are everywhere. Buy her a few more handbags and that'll settle it. Talking business with Miss Jane is what really matters." The smile on Grace's face almost froze solid, but she didn't dare show it. Looking at Mr. Tai's greasy face made me feel nauseated. I was about to find an excuse to leave when Sean Stone walked over. "Miss Jane," he said, "Mr. Lewis and the others are waiting to toast with you. I was wondering why you were still here." He was wearing a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms, his tall figure standing straight. When he stood next to Mr. Tai with his balding head and beer belly, the contrast was striking. Grace's eyes immediately lit up, and she quietly shifted her body away. She quietly widened the distance between herself and Mr. Tai, her eyes glistening as she looked at Sean Stone. I saw it all clearly. I smiled faintly, then looped my arm through Sean Stone's arm, apologized briefly to Mr. Tai, and led Sean away. Sean raised his eyebrows in surprise but said nothing. Once we were out of their sight, I was about to pull my arm free, but he gently held it in place. He lifted his hand, curled it into a loose fist, and brought it to his lips. "Smile? It's rare for Miss Jane to take the initiative like this. I almost wish Mr. Tai were here every day." My face flushed instantly. That night, after I got home, the image of Grace clinging so closely to Mr. Tai made me feel uneasy. After thinking it over for a while, I called Mike. Mike was quick-witted and sociable, and even after resigning, he still kept in touch with colleagues at Prosperity Group. When I asked about Ethan, Mike sounded surprised. "Miss Jane, you didn't know? 2 months ago, Prosperity Group's cash flow broke. To keep the company running, President Ethan had to sell several houses." I was stunned. Ever since our last argument, I had deliberately ignored all news related to Prosperity Group and Ethan, so I had no idea this had happened. Prosperity Group was not a newly established small company. When I left, everything had still been relatively stable. How could its financial chain have suddenly collapsed? I called Ethan, but all I heard was his voicemail, over and over again. I then called the landline at his house, but no one answered. The sense of unease in my chest kept growing. Ethan had grown up accustomed to comfort and privilege, with a very strong sense of pride. To be driven to the point of selling houses, he must have truly reached a dead end. I grabbed my car keys in a hurry and drove straight to the old house. I rang the doorbell for a long time, but no one came to open the door. Frowning, I took out a brand new key from my pocket. Since childhood, I had wandered everywhere with my father, sometimes sleeping under bridges, sometimes taking shelter in abandoned construction sites. When I first came to the Ethan household, I knew nothing. I had never seen a flushing toilet, never slept on a soft bed, and had never owned anything of my own, let alone had a key. Ethan's mother had handed me that key. I cherished it, rubbing it again and again. I walked around the room, then finally pulled off the pillowcase, slipped the key into the inner lining, gently laid my head on the pillow, and fell asleep. The feeling was deeply satisfying, as if it would never be lost that way. When Ethan found out, he tapped my forehead and called me foolish, saying a key wasn't anything valuable, it was just for opening doors. I pressed my lips together. He didn't know that to me. This key was not simply for opening a door. It had opened a doorway for me, on those dark nights under bridges and in dusty construction sites. A doorway to a brighter world. I stubbornly refused to use the key. I would rather curl up outside the door and wait for everyone to come home than endure Ethan mocking me to my face, only to secretly make an extra key behind my back. After school one day, he swaggered over and tossed it to me. "Here, now you've got 2. No need to worry about losing it anymore." When I left the house, I placed the key I used regularly on the table and only took the one I had hidden away, the one that had never been used, as a keepsake. The house was in complete disarray. Empty liquor bottles lay scattered across the floor. The windows were tightly shut, and the air was stifling. I frowned and carefully stepped through the mess of bottles on the floor, searching for Ethan. I found him in what used to be my old room. Ethan was sitting barefoot on the floor, his head buried in his arms, his entire body reeking of the sour stench of alcohol. Beside his foot, an empty beer can lay on its side, pale yellow beer spilling across the floor. Anger rushed straight to my head. I raised my handbag and slammed it hard against his head. "Ethan, get up right now." I dragged Ethan, whose eyes were still clouded with drunkenness, into the car and drove straight to the cemetery where his mother rested, on a hill in the outskirts of the city. The cold mountain wind swept past, making Ethan shiver. His eyes gradually became clearer. He stood silently in front of the gravestone for a long time, then turned to look at me, his gaze dark and complicated. After a long while, he said in a low voice, "Didn't you already leave? Why did you come back out of pity for me?" Anger flared up inside me again. Is this really the time to sulk with me? "Ethan, Prosperity Group doesn't belong to you alone. I put my effort into it too. What exactly happened? Why did the company's financial chain break?" Ethan fell silent for a moment, the exhaustion and collapse plain on his face. It turned out that after that banquet, he had rejected Grace's proposal outright, saying he would not marry her. Yet he felt guilty, and as a form of compensation he gave her extensive authority to participate in the company's operations. As a result, Grace somehow managed to get close to Mr. Tai of Guangmao Group. Lured by his promises, she took Prosperity Group's confidential information with her and defected to Guangmao. After that, Guangmao used the information Grace provided and began employing underhanded tactics. They joined forces with several other companies to suppress Prosperity Group, cutting off its financial chain. I stood frozen for a moment, not knowing whether to blame him or mock him. Ethan was acting as CEO as if he were playing house. But then again, Guangmao's hostility toward Prosperity Group was partly related to me. In the early years when Prosperity Group had just started, Ethan and I went everywhere looking for investors. At one banquet, we approached Guangmao. Mr. Tai harassed me and Ethan. In a fit of rage, I smashed a wine bottle over his head. He needed 14 stitches. Ever since then, Guangmao had been trying to make things difficult for Prosperity Group, only lacking the right opportunity. Now that Grace had done this, it was no different from handing the knife straight to Mr. Tai. I raised an eyebrow. "Do you want revenge?" Ethan's eyes immediately lit up. "Are you going to help me?" Under his hopeful gaze, I shook my head. "Prosperity Group is your company. I can't use my own company as a favor to help you fight Guangmao." "Ethan, you're not a child anymore. When you're bullied, don't act like a kid, throwing a tantrum, giving up, and waiting for someone else to take revenge for you. You're a man, the CEO of Prosperity Group and the son of Deanna Oan. You need to learn to shoulder responsibility on your own." Ethan's face alternated between pale and flushed. Finally, he clenched his teeth. "What do I need to do?" I thought for a moment, then spoke slowly. "I'll help you resolve the funding issue, but there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. In exchange, Ethan, you'll have to be my assistant for a period of time." Ethan was stunned at first, then his face flushed red. "Jane, are you trying to humiliate me?" I replied in surprise, "Ethan, I was your assistant for 10 years. Are you saying that for those 10 years you always considered it a humiliation for me?" Ethan's expression stiffened. "How can that be the same?" I gave a cold laugh. "What's not the same? Are your skills better than mine? Or is it simply because you're a man, so I'm supposed to support you by default?" Ethan fell silent, unable to say a word. I accepted Ethan as my assistant. The task I assigned him was to go to Fortune Sky Group to seek investment. Ethan looked extremely displeased. "You know very well that my relationship with Michelle Mann isn't good. Why are you making me go? Can't you choose another company?" I raised 3 fingers. "First, Fortune Sky Group is extremely wealthy. Right now, there aren't many companies capable of injecting a large amount of capital into Prosperity Group, and Fortune Sky is one of them. Second, I have a fairly good relationship with President Mann. For my sake, She is the most likely person to invest in Prosperity Group. Third, I am the CEO, and you are the assistant. You have to listen to me. Half of Ethan's face darkened. I crossed my legs, mentally preparing myself for him to lose his temper. Unexpectedly, he stood there frowning for a while, then finally left with a grim expression. The corner of my mouth lifted slightly. It wasn't that I was deliberately making things difficult for Ethan. His personality simply needed to be thoroughly tempered. Michelle Mann grew up overseas. She was straightforward by nature, an enthusiastic supporter of charitable causes, and especially fond of gender equality. In the past, she had looked down on Ethan's arrogant demeanor. Ethan, on the other hand, had mocked her for not being feminine at all. In truth, I had already finalized the investment agreement with Michelle Mann beforehand. Ethan's trip this time was merely a formality, but he had no idea. Even so, Michelle Mann's sharp tongue was not easy to deal with. If Ethan wanted to secure the money, he would have to abandon his deeply ingrained masculine pride in front of this so-called adversary. A few days later, Ethan walked into my office. He cleared his throat lightly to get my attention, then pretended to be calm as he said, "I've secured the investment from Fortune Sky. Prosperity Group is saved." There was a hint of smugness in his eyes, faintly reminiscent of the arrogant young man from years ago, the one who had once tossed a key to me with self-satisfaction. I slowly flipped through the documents and said, "Assistant Ethan, well done. President Mann didn't make things difficult for you, did she?" Ethan seemed to think of something, and his expression twisted slightly for a moment. After a long pause, he said with mild irritation, "Michelle Mann, she's probably not as detestable as I thought." I responded with a brief, waved my hand, and signaled for him to leave. After focusing on replying to emails, I looked up and realized he was still standing there. Our eyes met. Ethan turned his face away awkwardly. I shook my head and continued working. After a while, I heard him ask softly, "Jane, back then, did you also have to lower yourself and humble yourself like this to beg others?" I looked up at him in surprise. Ethan's gaze was complicated. He pressed his lips together, said nothing more, and quietly left. Ethan gradually became accustomed to the assistant's work. He arrived on time every day, never late, and was even more diligent than when he had been CEO. The arrogance he once had faded considerably. Now, he could confidently introduce himself to others. "Hello, I'm Assistant to CEO Jane." Mike whispered to me privately, "Jane, has President Ethan really changed?" He said that a few days earlier, Ethan had even apologized to him, saying that he hadn't understood things before and had caused him a lot of trouble. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. My sudden idea had produced results far more obvious than I expected. It seemed men really couldn't be indulged. When the police called, Ethan was with me at the time. I hurriedly hung up without paying attention to anything else, grabbed my car keys, and rushed outside. Ethan didn't hesitate. He picked up my coat and chased after me. "Jane, slow down a bit." When we arrived at the hospital, Officer Zhang was already waiting at the entrance. He looked at me with a complicated expression. "Miss Jane, please come with me. That witness isn't going to make it much longer." I nearly stumbled as I followed Officer Zhang inside. Ethan moved to step forward to support me, but I avoided him. He could only remain silent, raising his hand behind my back as a precaution. The elevator doors opened, and the people inside filed out one after another. My mind was in complete turmoil, thinking about what lay ahead, and I failed to notice my surroundings. Just as I was about to step into the elevator, a familiar voice suddenly rang out. "Miss Jane, are you feeling unwell? You don't look so good." I looked up in shock and saw Sean Stone standing in front of me, beside an elegant middle-aged woman. There were faint similarities in their features. Seeing my expression, Sean frowned slightly. Before he could say anything, the woman smiled gently. "Sean, if you have something to take care of, go ahead. Miss Kathy Zhang is still outside. As for Miss Jane, why don't you follow her and see if you can help with anything?" Sean nodded lightly and turned to follow me into the elevator. I tried to stay calm and hurriedly said, "If you have things to do, go take care of them. There's no need to follow me. I'm fine. I'm just visiting a patient." Sean smiled softly, the corners of his lips curving upward, just like the woman's smile. "Miss Jane, my mother is a member of this hospital's board of directors. With me here, I might be able to help." You don't need to worry. This has nothing to do with me pursuing you. I thought for a moment and did not refuse. Ethan stood beside me with a dark expression, his brows tightly furrowed. Even though I had prepared myself mentally when I stood before the person I had hated for so many years, I was still shaken. The man lying on the hospital bed was gaunt and haggard, his complexion pale. The man before me now bore no resemblance to the chubby, always smiling owner of the Bowsy shop I remembered. The moment he saw me, tears streamed down his face, running along his gaunt cheeks, bleached white from chemotherapy. "Miss, child, how have you been these past few years? It's all my fault. I'm not a good person. I'm sorry to you and to your father. Now I'm receiving my punishment." He sobbed uncontrollably. Yet I could not tell how much of those tears were for his own fate and how much were genuine remorse. Officer Zhang maintained a professional expression. "David Zhang, the person you asked me to bring is here. You can speak now, can't you?" David Zhang wiped his tears. "Back then, in the Donghua Alley case, I lied. That incident had nothing to do with Jian Cheng. He ran over to save someone. The child was pushed down by the girl who was with her. She hit her head on a rock and died." Officer Zhang turned on the recording device and asked sternly, "If you saw the incident clearly, why didn't you tell the truth during the interrogation? Why did you instead frame Jian Cheng?" David Zhang covered his face. "I didn't want to do it either. But the girl's father came to me and gave me a large sum of money. Back then, my Bowsy shop had terrible business, and my wife argued with me all day. I don't know why I was so foolish and took that money." He lifted his head, his face drenched in tears. "Miss, I wronged your father, and I wronged you, but I truly didn't do it on purpose. I thought he would only be locked up for a few years. I never expected him to be so resolute that he would smash his head and take his own life. I really didn't expect that. I'm not a bad person. Do you remember? When you and your father had nothing to eat, it was me who gave you Bowsy. I truly didn't mean it. Child, can you forgive me so I can leave this world in peace?" My nose burned as I clenched my fists, forcing myself not to let tears fall in front of him. I looked straight into his eyes and spoke every word clearly. "The money for the Bowsy, I can pay you back 10 times over. But my father's life, can you give that back to me?" David Zhang choked, unable to say a single word. Seeing the coldness in my eyes, despair gradually surfaced on his face. After leaving the hospital room, my mind was still in a daze, the image of my father smiling brightly at me replaying over and over in my head. Because I wasn't paying attention, I tripped over a small chair placed outside the door and nearly fell to the ground. Sean Stone reacted quickly and caught me, his voice steady. "Miss Jane, watch your step. Look ahead." I took a deep breath, lifted my head and thanked him. My gaze swept past Ethan. His hand was still suspended in midair, and his face had been deathly pale the entire time. With this new testimony, my father's case could be reopened for investigation. Officer Zhang rubbed his hands, looking troubled. "Miss Jane, the best possible outcome is to restore your father's innocence. As for Grace, she was only 13 at the time. Legally, she was still a minor, and criminal responsibility cannot be pursued." My heart sank. Even though I had anticipated this, hearing it spoken aloud by the police still left me overwhelmed with disappointment. Sean Stone placed a hand on my shoulder and said in a low voice, "Don't lose heart. What the law cannot punish, public opinion and morality still can." After leaving the hospital, my spirits were low. Ethan insisted on driving me home to rest. Along the way, his face remained stern, and he didn't say a word. From time to time, he stole glances in my direction, but still didn't speak. I was already deeply upset, and when I thought of the entanglement between him and Grace, seeing his awkward tongue-tied demeanor only made my anger flare up. I grabbed a stuffed animal beside me and hurled it straight at him, as if venting my frustration. "Don't bother me." The stuffed toy hit him squarely on the head. Its hard nose brushed his temple, leaving a red mark. I froze for a moment. Ethan pressed his lips together and said, "Sit still, we're almost home." He drove fast and took me back to his family's old house. I frowned. "What are you trying to do?" Ethan was silent for a while before speaking with difficulty. "Jane, I really didn't know the truth was like this. Grace told me that she had pointed out your father as the murderer, and that afterward he couldn't bear the pressure and took his own life. As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped himself hard across the face. On his pale skin, 5 bright red finger marks immediately appeared. I was blind. I couldn't see her true nature. I even forced you to work for your own enemy. I really am a bastard. His eyes reddened. Jane, only after you left did I realize that in this house, in the company, in my life, everything seemed to be missing something. I had no motivation anymore. Otherwise, I wouldn't have handed the company over to Grace. We've lived together for 20 years. Long ago, we became like family. In the past, I was arrogant and conceited, thinking you would always be there for me. Relying on your kindness and your gratitude toward my mother, I acted recklessly and kept doing wrong. You were right, he continued. I have a dark, despicable mindset. In truth, I depended on you while also being jealous of you. I stared at him in astonishment. Ethan, the noble young master of the She family, was jealous of me? He lowered his gaze, a bitter smile forming on his lips. You don't know, ever since childhood I've been jealous of you. When we were young, I envied you for studying better than me, for so easily earning my mother's praise. When we grew up, I envied you for being more capable at work. Everything you did better than me. The entire company, big and small matters alike, depended on you. When problems arose, the first person employees thought of wasn't me, it was you, Jane. At business dinners, whenever Prosperity Group was mentioned, people would only say it was thanks to Assistant Jane. As for me, the so-called CEO, I was just an empty title. Everyone's attention was always on you. That was why he became infatuated with Grace, because in her eyes, there was only him. Standing beside her, he finally felt admired, felt that he possessed the so-called pride of a man. He gave a self-mocking laugh. Only now did he realize that even the woman who always claimed that he was the only one in her heart had been lying. She came to him for money, and that money had been earned by me, Jane. Thinking back on it now, he truly felt like a smug clown. At first he thought he was merely jealous of me, but when Seanstone appeared by my side, he discovered that his jealousy had driven him nearly insane. How ridiculous it was. On one hand, he pushed me away out of envy. On the other, he went mad whenever he saw me grow close to someone else. He tilted his head to look out the window, not letting me see his eyes, his voice trembling slightly. He had been jealous for far too long. Every day he ate poorly and slept restlessly, so he began thinking about how to defeat me. I was too outstanding. He could not surpass me in any aspect. It seemed the only way he could take revenge was to delay the marriage I had always longed for. He thought that if he waited a little longer, dragged it out a little more, until I had no other choices left, until I no longer shone so brightly, then he would marry me. By then, I would realize that the only person who would stay by my side in the end was him. He had even sworn silently before his mother's grave that when that day came, he would treat me well for the rest of his life. All the grievances I had accumulated over the years surged like a flood, blurring my vision with tears. Every time Ethan avoided the topic of marriage, I had questioned myself countless times. Was it because I wasn't good enough? Because I hadn't done enough? Or because he despised me for being the daughter of a drifter who lived by collecting trash? I threw myself into studying and buried myself in work, hoping he could overlook my background and see my worth. I never expected that what held him back was not my humble origins, but the light emitted by my relentless efforts. That light had hurt Ethan's eyes. I didn't know whether to feel angrier or more aggrieved. Gritting my teeth, I said, "Ethan, you really are a bastard." Ethan raised his hand to wipe his eyes before turning back to look at me. His eyes were red, yet he nodded firmly. Yes, these days, following you as an assistant, I finally understood how hard you've worked, and how foolish I was before. I don't even dare think back on it. When we had nothing, how you, a lone girl, overcame everything on your own. Jane, I've truly woken up, he said. From now on, I'll strive to become a CEO in the truest sense, a responsible man, no longer childish, no longer stupid. Can you forgive me? Can you give me a chance to pursue you again, starting from the beginning? This time, I want to pursue you openly and honorably because you deserve it. I thought Ethan was just paying lip service. I never expected him to truly change so completely. Not only at the company, where he humbly learned from others, but even at social gatherings, where he could now chat and laugh naturally with everyone. The first time I saw that, I couldn't believe my eyes. One had to know that in the past, Ethan detested social events most of all, especially having to feign friendliness with strangers, smiling everywhere just to make connections. More than once, he had mocked me to my face. "Jane, why do you like throwing yourself into those social scenes so much? Do you even know who those people are? Do they know who you are? They wouldn't even spare you a glance, yet you rush up, pressing your warm face against their cold backsides. Don't you feel ashamed? It's infuriating. Why do you have to lower yourself like that? Are you deliberately putting on a show for me?" A show? Of course not. I don't like drinking, and I wasn't born skilled at socializing. Society is built on relationships and contracts. It doesn't fall from the sky between two people. There always has to be someone who takes the initiative, someone who tries every possible way to connect, to introduce themselves, and to build relationships. Someone who understands the complex ties between people and establishes their own network. I had said these things to Ethan countless times, but he had always dismissed me as meddlesome. Now, there was no longer any need for me to advise him. He had reached understanding on his own. You can never wake someone who is pretending to sleep. When they want to wake up, they will do so naturally. After attending several banquets, Ethan gradually became adept. His mother had been a renowned businesswoman, and he had followed her around since childhood, so his observational skills and ability to handle situations were never poor. It was just that his formerly arrogant, pampered temperament made him feel superior to others and unwilling to humble himself. Now, with the investment from Michelle Mann's Fortune Sky Group, Prosperity Group was like a withered tree revived by rain. Ethan's temperament changed as well, becoming more polished in social settings. Returning to the top was likely only a matter of time. While I was lost in thought, Chairman Liu of Hating Group, with his protruding belly, walked over to propose a toast. After a few words of conversation, I was about to finish the drink when Ethan appeared out of nowhere and stopped me. He smiled gently, like a spring breeze. "Chairman Liu, Miss Jane hasn't been in great health lately. I'll drink this one on her behalf." Chairman Liu winked, his smile full of implication. "Miss Jane is so beautiful, who wouldn't want to pursue a jade wrapped in gold? A piece of jade wrapped in gold is hard to choose from, after all." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After the banquet ended, Ethan came out of the restroom, his face pale after vomiting. I frowned. "I can take care of myself. Why push yourself so hard?" Remembering his past words, I couldn't help but mock him. "Are you deliberately putting on a show for me?" He met my gaze, looking awkward. His breathing grew hoarse as he spoke. "I didn't mean anything else. I just wanted to understand the feeling you went through back then." I sighed, looked him straight in the eyes, and said seriously, "Ethan, I've already told you, spilled water can't be taken back." Sean Stone's message came just as I was getting ready for bed, as concise and decisive as his personality. Done. I opened my phone and went on Weibo. Sean Stone had just posted a promotional video for an online short film titled Suspected Flower Pavilion and the Straight Strike. The female lead of the film was Grace. Following the link, I found Grace's Weibo page. Her verified profile read, "Artist under Haitian Media, actress, dancer." I smiled in satisfaction. Haitian Media was an entertainment media project led by me, jointly established with Michelle Mann's Fortune Sky Group, Chairman Liu's Hating Group, and Sean Stone. Only recently did I learn that Sean Stone was not only a 3-time award-winning actor and the son of a hospital director, but also the heir to Hongsheng Group, a leading conglomerate in the industry. At my request, Sean Stone had personally appeared to sign Grace when she joined, right at that previous banquet. I had already noticed then that Grace had feelings for Sean Stone. He was young, handsome, his career on the rise, with a brilliant future ahead. Compared to a vulgar man like Mr. Tai, Sean Stone was naturally the superior choice. Moreover, there was an even more direct reason. Mr. Tai's company was already in trouble. I understood Grace's nature all too well. She always chose whatever benefited her most, ruthless, willing to use any means to achieve her goals. When her father went bankrupt and debts piled up, she immediately followed her mother into a remarriage. Unfortunately, her stepfather was nothing more than an incompetent freeloader. Within a few years, the family assets were completely squandered. Grace then quickly latched onto Ethan. I deliberately collaborated with Fortune Sky and Hating Group to jointly suppress Guangmao Group, controlled by Mr. Tai. This pushed Guangmao into a financial crisis. Grace was extremely sharp. The moment she sensed that the situation was turning bad, she withdrew immediately, without hesitation accepting the olive branch Sean Stone extended to her. She thought she had grabbed hold of a lifeline, but in reality, it was the talisman that would claim her life. The contract Haitian media signed with her lasted 10 years. If she breached it midway, the compensation would amount to $50 million. The very first job the company assigned her was to star in a film alongside Sean Stone. Grace was overjoyed, confidently believing that Sean Stone had feelings for her. Otherwise, why would a 3-time award-winning actor agree to act with a newcomer like her? Wasn't he clearly paving the way for her? Because of that, Grace became arrogant within the company, offending quite a few colleagues and managers. It was true that Sean Stone was paving the way for her. But this road did not lead to the clouds. It led straight to hell. When Grace saw the title of the script, she froze. It was Suspected Flower Pavilion, a story that contained the dark secret she had never dared to mention her entire life. But the contract outweighed everything. She had only 2 choices, either obediently film the project or pay $50 million in damages. Grace had no such money, so she could only grit her teeth and endure it. She planned to get through the shoot perfunctorily, but she never expected the director to be a notorious perfectionist in the industry. 1 take not good enough, shoot it 10 times. 10 times not good enough, shoot it 100 times. 100 times still not right, shoot it 1,000 times. In any case, the budget for this film was ample. The investors behind it had already made it clear that costs were not a concern, they only wanted quality. Grace had never suffered like this before. Eventually, when she acted, she clenched her teeth, her gaze turning ferocious, even slightly unhinged. Behind the camera, the director could not hide his excitement. That's it! That's the emotion. Keep acting like this. It's perfect. Suspected Flower Pavilion was adapted from a real case from years ago. Aside from changing the murderer from a 13-year-old child to a 33-year-old woman, nearly all other details were preserved with striking accuracy. Sean Stone personally played the male lead, a homeless man with an intellectual disability, wandering everywhere with his young daughter. Despite trying to save someone, he was falsely accused of murder. Not wanting his daughter to endure society's discriminatory stares, after using the last few coins in his pocket to buy her a lollipop, he chose to smash his head and take his own life at the crime scene itself. He was neither intelligent nor wealthy, and aside from death, he had no other way to prove his innocence. For the script of Suspected Flower Pavilion, Sean Stone personally contacted the best screenwriters in the industry to refine it together. People often say that to judge whether a film is good, you must look at 3 elements: the script, the director, and the actors. Suspected Flower Pavilion possessed all 3. The moment the short film was released, it immediately went viral across social media. Discussion of the film's content gradually spread to the real case from the past. Donghua Ali was still there, and the people who had witnessed the incident back then were still alive. One after another, they spoke up online, pointing out suspicious aspects of the case. Some said the homeless man had always been kind and had never harmed anyone over many years. Others said that after his death, no one knew where his daughter had gone. Even the owner of the nearby convenience store asked his nephew to post online, praising how faithfully the film had recreated the story of that day. It was indeed true that the homeless man had used his last 3 coins to buy a lollipop for his daughter. The candy was strawberry-flavored, because the shop owner had told him that flavor was sweet. Public attention gradually shifted from Suspected Flower Pavilion to the real case that had occurred 20 years earlier, when a 7-year-old boy had lost his life. Online users turned into Sherlock Holmes-style detectives, scouring every possible clue. In the end, they uncovered the true identity of the 13-year-old girl who had been present at the scene back then. It was Grace, who was now starring as the female lead in the film. The revelation struck like a bolt from the blue. leaving everyone stunned and speechless. Online discussion about Grace grew increasingly heated, and more of her personal history was exposed. Abandoning her bankrupt father, ignoring her sick mother, clinging to an heir to a wealthy family, and then dumping him to study abroad, and even crafting a public image of being deeply in love. Netizens overseas also began sharing more information about Grace's indulgent lifestyle during her years abroad. At that very moment, the police concluded their investigation and issued an official statement. The death of the 7-year-old boy in Donghua Alley 20 years ago had been caused by a 13-year-old girl and had nothing to do with Jian Cheng. Although the announcement did not name the girl involved, after everything that had been exposed online, everyone knew her name was Grace. Sean Stone's performance had been extraordinarily convincing. Before filming began, he had spent more than a month living at my place, almost draining every memory of my father from my mind. When the film was released, audiences could not help but empathize with the pitiable yet admirable father in the story. This only fueled public outrage further toward Grace, who had framed another person without a shred of remorse. In an instant, labels like murderer, evil, and vicious became inseparably attached to her name. It was said that every day, her personal phone number and email inbox received hundreds, even thousands, of threatening calls and messages. Grace cried and begged the company to arrange for her to go abroad to escape the storm, but her manager bluntly refused. The manager replied leisurely, "Being hated but still famous is also a kind of fame." Taking advantage of the fact that she still had public attention, the manager hurriedly arranged for her to appear on popular reality TV shows and radio interviews. Grace immediately turned hostile, collapsing onto the floor, kicking and protesting, refusing to work. The manager remained indifferent. "That's fine. Then just wait for the court summons," he said casually. "And remember to prepare $50 million in liquidated damages for breaching the contract." At the celebration banquet for the film's success, in my capacity as an investor, I made an important decision. All proceeds from the short film would be used to establish a charitable foundation called Donghua, dedicated to helping people with disabilities who face legal trouble but cannot afford lawyers. I wanted them to know that aside from death, there were still other ways to seek justice. That day, Ethan also appeared at the banquet. I was somewhat surprised. His company, Prosperity Group, had only just fully recovered, and there was still plenty for him to handle. Perhaps he had squeezed out some precious time to come. After several months without seeing him, Ethan looked much thinner, his eyes tinged with melancholy. He had someone deliver a large flower arrangement, which I instructed the staff to display in the outer hall alongside those from other business partners. Ethan smiled wryly. "I didn't bring flowers just for you. I was afraid it wouldn't be appropriate, and afraid you wouldn't accept them." He paused, then said softly, "Congratulations on reclaiming justice for your father. I think that with a daughter as capable as you, he would certainly be very proud." I fell silent for a moment, then replied with a simple thank you. In the past, there had been so many things I wanted to say to him, but every time he was impatient, turning his back and walking away, leaving me with nothing but a cold, distant silhouette. Now he stood right in front of me, looking as though he was ready to listen, hoping I would say something, yet I no longer had anything left to say. Still, the way he looked at me was genuinely pitiful. His eyes lingered on my face, reluctant to look away. After thinking for a moment, I took an invitation card out of my bag. "It's on the 8th of next month at the Golden Garden Hotel. If you have time, Ethan, you're welcome to attend." His face went noticeably pale. He slowly, heavily, as if carrying 1,000 pounds, accepted the invitation from my hand. The card had been personally designed by Sean Stone. He was meticulous and exacting in every detail, from the paper material to the visual layout and even the calligraphic strokes of the lettering. Everything had been carefully selected and revised multiple times. He had redesigned it more than 10 times. I grew impatient from being asked too often and casually pulled one out. "Let's go with this one." Sean Stone looked at the card and nodded in agreement. Twin lotus blossoms in full bloom, an auspicious sign. Looking at the remaining designs, themed around harmony in marriage, paired phoenixes, and mandarin ducks flying together, I was momentarily at a loss for words. Ethan gently traced the image of the twin lotus flowers on the invitation. After a long silence, he finally raised his head and forced a faint smile. "All right. I missed every important moment in your past, but this time, at such a significant event in your life, I will definitely be there to witness it." As he spoke, his eyes seemed covered by a thin layer of ice, shimmering with restrained sadness. I parted my lips about to say something, when someone from the film crew called me over for photos. When I turned back, Ethan was gone. All that remained on the table was an exquisitely crafted jewelry box, lying there in silence. I recognized it immediately. Even without opening it, I knew what was inside: a pigeon blood-red ruby necklace. Suddenly, an arm wrapped around my waist. Seanstone rested his chin on my shoulder and asked softly, "What are you looking at?" I smiled calmly. "Nothing. Someone just left a jewelry box behind. I'll return it later." Then I turned to him and asked casually, "So, have you chosen the wedding candies yet?"